Hey everybody, and welcome to Straight to the Point Tennis. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Nike Vapor 6. The Vapor 6 was definitely an evolved sort of new platform for the Vapor lineage. The Vapors 4 and 5 had a very similar traction, outsole, last, midsole, and even upper. I don't have a 5 with me, but I do have a 4. It's very different in terms of the traction. It's pretty shallow, but traditional herringbone and sort of this slippery lateral portion on the outsole. You'll see they have this longer, sort of chunkier foot frame that Federer actually had them carve out to reduce some weight. The upper is sort of this, let's say, synthetic leather all the way around, not very breathable. There are some ventilation holes on this side, and they overlay this plastic piece on the toe. So that's the Vapor 4 and 5 concept in a nutshell. Moving on to the 6, what they implemented was this rigid flywire upper that is hard to articulate without actually wearing it, but the way that this plastic flywire wraps around the foot combined with this sort of really hard overlay makes for a super rigid experience. Now that's great for support, but it's terrible for ventilation. The way that the upper wraps around your foot is not necessarily one-to-one, or let's say improves with break-in. It does feel like it's pretty rigid throughout the playing experience, but that being said, it's super stable. Like, you can really feel confident pushing off. And I think once Federer switched to these, that's why he stayed with this upper for so long. I think he was with it for like 3 or 4 years. Yeah, moving on to the midsole of the shoe, one thing I really appreciate about the 6 was they had a dual cushion setup. Lunar Light in the forefoot, so premium foam, and then you had traditional air zoom in the heel. Really great setup, nimble, but enough combination of court feel and cushion between you and a hard court to feel like a really balanced performer. And on the outsole, which I think is the greatest part of this shoe, it's my favorite herringbone I've ever used. It's super grippy. It's got this really flat interaction with the court surface, very even, and then you have this, I'm not actually sure if it's carbon fiber, but it definitely has an aesthetic of it. Really nice midfoot shank, sort of a hallmark of the Vapor series. This one is kind of the perfect length in my opinion, maybe like half my finger, half my index finger. I think that's just a really good distance on my size 9 foot to cover in terms of rigid stability. The Vapor 12 that just released, in my opinion, sort of a too extreme evolution of that, where it's a lot of shank, creeps into the midsole. Here there is that creeping into the midsole, but it does give you a little bit of cushion. The way that they layered in this foam on the outsole as the outsole connects to the midsole. In general, I think the Vapor 6 was a great match day shoe. If you're playing in not so humid conditions, more of a cold environment that would allow you to not worry so much about ventilation. What I feel like is the Vapor 6's downfall is when you are in those sort of humid, hot, heavy conditions, it turns into a swamp in the shoe. I mean, I think you have to wear 2 socks because your first pair of socks is going to get kind of destroyed. So yeah, I think it definitely has a place. It still is more advanced technologically than the current Vapor in terms of its midsole. So we have to remember that. Even though the price to pick up a Vapor 6 in 2025 brand new is really expensive and you probably have to worry about the glue, I do think that these are still a really fun option if you're just going out for a light hit or you're playing in cold conditions. Just an incredible shoe for an experience like that. One thing I do want to mention about the Vapor 6 and this rendition of Flywire was on the white cosmetics, it faded, so brutally, and in some instances, sort of like a mold situation, like under the upper that would develop and create these spots. So the way that they implemented this Flywire upper was not tested in terms of its aging capability. black one looks a lot better, but you know, the white colorways, they don't necessarily come through super nice, you know, 15 years later. One other thing I did want to discuss on this shoe is the foot frame. You can see on the back portion of the heel here, it really did allow for nice heel cupping, which I think prevented heel slippage with this shoe. Nice take on the fit frame where, you know, previous 4 and 5, it was much longer and the containment wasn't as good. So good implementation of that design here, where I think now we've seen them kind of migrate that into the midfoot. I would appreciate it more in the heel area because I think it helps improve heel lockdown and prevent heel slippage, which is actually a problem with the Vapor 12. So interesting to note that Vapor 6 from 2009 is probably a better performer in terms of heel fit than the current Vapor in 2025. So in conclusion, I think the Vapor 6 is a really great shoe if you're playing in indoor conditions, colder conditions. Super stable, super lightweight, nice cushion setup combined with court feel, and the traction is dynamite. Like probably the best traction of any Vapor shoe I've ever used. Thanks everybody for tuning into this shoe review. We'll see you in the next one.